The proverb I chose is "The pen is mightier than the sword." This is a common proverb in today's culture. The proverb can have several different interpretations, but to me, the sword and the pen mean much more than just a sword and a pen. The pen resembles communication, while the sword is violence. So the proverb says that communication is mightier than violence in a conflict or showing a purpose. So the pen resembles communication, and this communication can be shown through words or literature or writing. The writer is trying to persuade the viewer of their opinion to connect their minds and solve an issue. A good and forceful writer can form opinions and reason. The pen is a much more reasonable route because it is very peaceful and you just don't want violence. The sword, on the other hand, resembles the violence and force that is used in, military. This is not preferred because it's violent, who wants to get hurt? And the sword is still needed, though, because for people who are completely unreasonable and not easily persuaded, needed some kind of force to get them to do what they need to do. But the pen is obviously preferred over the sword because of violence reasons, and the pen is just so much more peaceful and reasonable route to go. So my interpretation is that communication is much more effective and peaceful and reasonable than the sword, which is the violence and the force, which ultimately the pen is mightier than the sword. So the students at BYU said that you use this proverb to say that you can solve problems or achieve your purpose better and more effectively through communication with swords than by violence with weapons. This is very similar to my interpretation because they specifically say that you can solve problems or achieve your purpose more effectively through communication with words than by violence with weapons. Also, usingenglish.com said that words in communication are more powerful than words in fighting. This is also very similar to my interpretation. So, the pen is mightier than the sword. Today, we encourage the more peaceful type of thing to solve a conflict, such as peaceful protests and stuff like that, instead of just starting a war and starting violence, starting shooting people. Because, to be honest, if someone starts murdering people for any reason to get a conflict resolved, no one's really going to follow it. But if you use words in peaceful protest, you may have people follow you more. So, the pen is mightier than the sword is used in several different contexts, obviously in the US with the protests or war, but also in today's life, you don't want to just go start a fight with someone. You want to explain and talk to them about it and persuade them and just use communication because it's a much better route to go. So the pen is mightier than the sword can have several different interpretations, but to me, the pen resembles communication and the sword resembles violence. So communication is much mightier than any type of violence. So I would use the pen over the sword.